Hey, boys and girls, coming in to talk to you about lesson 9.3, which is compare fractions with the same numerator. Last week, we compared fractions with the same denominators, most of them anyway. And when we think about denominators, that's the size of the pieces in a fraction that we're talking about. So when we were comparing denominators, we were comparing the same size pieces. It was just how many of those pieces did we have? Did we have, let's say we're talking about fifths. We may have been comparing 1/5 to 4/5. We know that 4 is bigger than 1 if the pieces are all fifths. So that means that 4/5 is going to be greater than 1/5. Pretty easy once you understand that pattern. Today, though, we're talking about the same numerator. We're talking about how many pieces we have now, but there can be different sizes because they're going to be different denominators. So now here is where those fraction strips and drawing yourself pictures comes in super handy until you can start to visualize what these pieces look like in your head, which you will get there. We use the manipulatives and we use the fraction strips and the drawings so that you can start to do these in your head. Don't worry if you can't do it yet. You're just learning. Okay? So let's unlock this problem. Marcos is at Athena's cafe. He can sit at a table with 5 of his friends or at a table with 7 of his friends. The same size spinach pie is shared equally among the people at each table. At which table should Marcos sit to get more pie? So, you may not be that into spinach pie, but pretend this is like a chocolate chip cookie. Do you want to share it amongst 5 people, or do you want to share it amongst 7 people? And you're really hungry and you really like chocolate chip cookies. The less people you share it with, the bigger piece you're going to get. Kind of like the smaller your denominator, the bigger the pieces are going to be. So let's look at 1/6 and 1/8. I want to go right to fraction strips. I'm going to put up one whole because it's always useful to know what these things are compared to one whole. And I'm going to put up 1/6 and 1/8. Thinking about denominators, which of those pieces is going to be bigger? Well, if we can remember that rule, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the piece, we could predict correctly that 1/6 is going to be bigger. If you're not thinking about that rule and you're just putting the pieces up, you can clearly see that 1/6, the teal colored strip, is larger than 1/8, the light blue colored strip. So I can tell from this that 1/6 is bigger than 1/8. So I'm going to get my drawing tool in here, and 1/6 is greater than 1/8. Now your book gives you these circles. I'm not a huge fan of these. I'll show you because you may come in contact with them. That's 1/6. And of course we would be neater on paper. This is hard. 1/8. Now, you can pretty much see that 1/6 is larger here, but sometimes they're so similar, it's hard to tell when you're dealing with a circle, like a wedge of a circle like this, which is why I prefer to go to the fraction strip. When in doubt, go to the fraction strip. All right, so Marco should sit at the table with how many friends to get more? It matters here what Marcos wants. If he wants more pie, he's going to sit at the table where he's going to get more pie, which we figured out from the strips and from the pictures that that's with 6 of his friends. Actually, he makes the 6. I'm sorry, that should be a 5. Can't forget about Marcos. He should sit with 5 of his friends, and that'll be the 1/6. If he wasn't hungry, he would want to sit at the other table because he would get less pie. All right, that's one way to do this. Our next example uses fraction strips. On Saturday, the campers paddled 2/8 of their planned route down the river. On Sunday, they paddled 2/3 of their route down the river. On which day did the campers paddle further? So we are comparing 2/8 and 2/3. Same numerator. They're both going to be two pieces. The denominator tells me the size of the pieces. So because these are fraction strips right here, let's go ahead and shade them in. I'm going to shade in 2/8. And then I'm going to shade in 2/3. Hopefully you can see very clearly here which one of these is going to be bigger, which is further. This is pretty clear. 2/3 is greater than 2/8 because when you're talking about eighths, you're breaking it into smaller pieces. So I'm going to come in here. 2/8 is first. So I have to make sure that I show that 2/3 is the smaller by putting the smaller end there. 2/8 is less than 2/3. So the question's asking which day did they paddle further? So now I got to go back to the problem and find which day is attached to which of those fractions. On Saturday, they paddled 2/8. On Sunday, they paddled 2/3. Okay, so they paddled further on. You got it. Sunday. Whoa, getting big and sloppy at the end there. All right, we ready to move on? Let's do it. One last problem. For her class party, Felicia baked 2 trays of snacks that were the same size. After the party, she had 3/4 of the carrot snack and 3/6 of the apple snack left over. So we want to compare the amount of snacks that were left over. So we're comparing 3/4 and 3/6. Fraction strips, 3/4. Now remember, this is what's left over, 3/6. Which one is more? Now 4 and 6 are getting kind of close together as denominators. So unless you really remember that rule that the bigger the denominator, the smaller the piece, I would always go ahead and use my strips to double check it. I can clearly see here that 3/4 are bigger than 3/6. It actually looks like 2/4 are the same size as 3/6, but that's an equivalent fraction and that's for another day. But I can see here that 3/4 are bigger than 3/6. 3/4, I can't say is bigger than, I should say is greater than 3/6. Here's our rule. The more pieces a whole is divided into, so the bigger the denominator, I'm just going to keep this brief, the smaller the pieces are. The fewer or the less pieces a whole is divided into, the bigger. Whoop, that's big. Or the bigger the pieces are. So which snack had more left over? Carrot or apple? Let's go back up. The 3/4 was the carrot. 3/6 was the apple. So 3/4. So I'm going to say carrot. Okay. So this is comparing fractions where you have different denominators. My suggestion is always to use your fraction strips, bookmark it, have it up there. All right. Great job today, guys. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.